Hi everybody, I'm just going to do an old-fashioned vinyl finds. I had a really fantastic comment the other day on an old video. Why do you always show trash vinyls? Why do you show boring records? I can't understand it. Why do you always show boring records? I thought, I'm not going to get personal here. I just heard one man's trash is another man's treasure. He's come back. Yes, but boring vinyls are boring vinyls, my friend. I said, are you kidding me? I said, most people would disagree. I said, boring vinyls would be Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the Beatles. Within a couple of minutes, I got a thumbs down and lost a subscriber. Thank you and goodbye. Now, for the rest of you, here's some really boring records. Just what I do. Ready, steady, go, rock steady, various artists on the Palmer label. Now, look at those girls. I said it before. They had never modelled before in their lives. You can see on the back here, I mean, she looks like she's got a broken back and she's definitely got a crick in her neck. But fantastic to find this. Now all of these records bar one are charity shop finds. So there we go. There's a fantastic track listing there. So not your usual. I don't think this is the best album in the world, compilation I've ever heard, but it's got some great stuff on it. My Time is the Right Time, Alton Ellis, and The Message by Alton Ellis are just beautiful, beautiful tracks. You've got Monty Morris, Ernest Ranglin, Joyce Bond Show, Lynn Tate and the Jets, Clancy's All Stars, Carlton Alfonso, The Groovers, Earl St. Joseph. Not your usual, the people you normally see or hear. So just fantastic to find this. Lovely condition. A bit of noise, even though it's hardly a mark on the record. But just to find that is fantastic. I'd love to know what this Fiddlesticks track is doing on here. It's Tommy McKenzie and his orchestra. Now I don't really see how that sits particularly on the album, but Madam Sin would probably tell me why. Not Waving but Drowning. Now this is a rare compilation on Little Sister Records, and it's all bands from Southeast London and North Kent. Now this is 1983 and it looks very 1983 underground stuff. It's post-punk. You've got a bit of minimal synth on here, you've got electronic, but you've also got a sort of post-punk. You've got a really underground feel. Some of it's quite amateurish. A lot of these bands probably never released more than maybe a track on this album or maybe a single or two. But fantastic. I really love the idea of those people in the early 80s. They're sort of bands you never hear of. You know, you'll hear of your OMDs and whatnot because they made it big, but you don't really hear of these people who maybe really wanted to make it big and wanted to get somewhere, but all they could do was maybe release one record or whatever. Just fantastic stuff, a real snapshot of its time. One or two weaker moments, inevitably. You know, like I say, some of it was a bit amateurish, but there's some really good stuff that I really like the fact that when people maybe aren't great musically or maybe aren't as competent or whatever, they have some real originality and you get definitely a kind of a different feel from it. In the record was this sheet. Now on Discogs this sheet isn't listed as being part of it. But this tells you how to get in touch with all the bands. There's some from Greenwich, Catford, Plumstead, Dartford, Kennington. And it tells you how to get in touch with them and where that stuff was recorded, etc. Just really interesting, you know, of its time, but also kind of has a timeless quality because it has that something different and unique about it. Jurassic 5, another boring record. This is conscious hip hop. Is classic 90s design, very PlayStation menu. There's the guys looking mean as you'd expect. They're probably all granddads now, and these are probably granddads now. Those of them who are still alive anyway. But yeah, this is not easy to find at all. Another desirable record. Quite an interesting one. It's got fantastic drum sound. It's right up high in the mix. The bass is fantastic, as you'd expect. But it's got a really it's just an unusual edge to it. That's lesson 6 here, the lecture. There's like an old fruity English voice saying things like, if this record was, if this 33 RPM record was played at 45, this is what it would sound like, you know, and then they would be slowing down and speeding up the track. And it's a bit like the Faust tapes almost, it's like, except with beats and stuff. It's some long instrumental sections, and then it just switches to another one and another one and another one. There's no real rapping on it. Just some fantastic beats on here. There's a couple of instrumental short snippets on the B-side, blacktop beat. Great sounding, you know, just the record, I mean, it just leaps out of the speakers. And the rapping, sometimes it can sound a bit dated, but it doesn't in this case. It really is an interesting, I think it's a really good record, that. I mean, all of these records are desirable and kind of fairly scarce and valuable, but boring at the same time, of course. Here is a really boring record. You're going to say, why is he showing this? I mean, boring. How many times have we seen this absolutely fantastic but boring record? This is a UK original mono. Now, it's a 3-figure record now because it's rare, and it's just, and this is in superb condition. Now, to find this, I say this is for one that's not a charity shop. To find this for £10 was an absolute wow moment for me. I'm still looking for the original US mono. Now, the only way to hear the true mono mix, because I think this is a fold down, is the US mono. Now, this still sounds fantastic. You know, you put the needle down, you know what to expect, and then it's completely different. You're hearing it differently for the first time. Great, I love that sort of thing. You know, I don't obsess about that kind of thing, but for Beefheart, there's not much left that I haven't heard, and to hear that in a different way is like, wow, fantastic. Now, you can get the Marble Arch reissue of this, which had 2 tracks taken off it, which is dumb, you know, but this just sounds fantastic. Now, Sundays did the mono reissue a few years back and made a big brouhaha and lots of money out of it, but actually the intros and outros to most of those tracks are stereo. A stereo mix with it made to sound mono and kind of segued in, and they took their they used the original record because the master tapes aren't missing, so whether they had a record that was crackly between tracks or something and they had to sort of do lots of studio work to make it work, I don't know, but they duped a lot of people with that. But there you are. I picked this up in a little market stall there's a town a few miles away from here. Now, if you don't get that at 9 AM, forget it. I'd noticed that I'd turned up sometimes at 9:15, and there's nothing there. You know, it's like, well, what is this? The guy just sells DVDs and games and stuff and toys, but he also always has 3 or 4 records, and sometimes I noticed once before I got there really early and it's like, wow, there's some good stuff here. Every other time I've got there, there's always been the same character, or the same 2 or 3 characters turn up and just take everything, because the guy sells stuff off fairly cheap. He does you a deal. And why are they there? They're there to sell it. They're not there to collect it. The idea of nowadays of going to a market stall, you know, any time after 9 o'clock in the morning, just forget it. Absolutely, it's not worth it. In the days gone by, you know, you could look at a record store and go back 2 hours later and they'd still be there. Nowadays, with the internet and people getting deals and the Discogs, everything to sell. And it's just an ugliness about it now. I made a point of getting that. I thought, I'm going to try and get that for 9 o'clock this particular week. Now, the side door was open at 9 o'clock, and just before 9, and I walked in. I said, "Is it okay?" And yeah, it's okay. We're just opening the doors. I got straight to his stall. The first record in the box was this one. Thank you very much. Quick look. I'll have that. Within seconds, there's someone standing next to me. Oh, excuse me, mate. Can you move over one other look? You just like, it's still going through. And they're there, 3 or 4 of them. And you know what they're there for, and I'll just, and it's just makes me sick nowadays. It's all about selling, and it's not about the joy of collecting. It takes something away. You know, there's a sort of a sliminess about them. boring, isn't it? That was a long time. Always ask when I go into shops. There's a particular shop where I have a huge shopping trolley full of records. It was full of Mantovani rubbish, and I thought I'm just going to go double back on these and just have another look. This is a little lesson to you all. Always double check. I thought, how did I miss these records when I went through again? There was just these two records right next to each other, and I missed them. But I went back and I saw, here's the Ray Russell Quartet, Dragon Hill. Now this is contemporary jazz, 1969, on CBS Realm. Not a label you see very often. Now, there wasn't that many records on that label. Most of the stuff was 30s, 40s, trad, jazz, etc. And in 1968 they released his first record, and in 1969 they released 4 contemporary albums. This one, Tony Oxley Quintet, which is very hard to find. Well, they're all hard to find, but that's a really nice one. Frank Ricotti, and another one which escapes my attention. That floats away from my mind right now. Anyway, he's a guitar player. In 1971-72 he released a live album, which just makes John McLaughlin sound like he's playing nursery rhymes. It's such an incendiary guitar workout, incredible. That's not the case on this album. There's a few fiery moments. He plays guitar, there's piano, bass and drums, but there's also on 2 tracks the addition of horns, Lynn Dobson from Soft Machine being one of them. There's the tracks. Can I Have My Paper Bag Back and the title track are just brilliant pieces of music. There's some really unusual sort of sig times and signatures and stuff, and a different feel to this album. There's a couple of times where there's the I'll do a solo, you do a solo, and then you do a solo, the usual jazz nonsense, you know. It's just got a great feel to this record. It's just different. It's just, you know, it's not US sounding and it's not European sounding. It's distinctly UK sounding record. But it's got something about it. It's not a 5-star album, but it's definitely a 4. And the record next to it, which I couldn't believe, was a jaw-dropping moment. I knew of this record, but I'd never seen it. There's an original Lou Bond. Now, it was never released in this country. To find an original Lou Bond LP amongst the Mantovanis in the charity shop was just remarkable, really. It is on We Produce, which is a Stax subsidiary. Has a wonderful sound to this record. I mean, as soon as you put the needle down, it's like Bill Withers to some degree. There's some of the clarity of sound. It's almost near mint, this record. A little bit of noise on side too, tiny. So it's a phenomenal find. It's highly desirable, and it's famous for To the Establishment, an 11-minute track here. But it's got a real kind of Bill Withers, slight touch of Isaac Hayes in his longer, sprawling tracks. But this is so held tight by crisp drums and lovely bass. It's got a languid quality. It's almost Tim Buckley at times. It's sort of got a languid, but held so tight. Wonderful sounding record. But the funny thing is, it's one of those that I get it. The quality of it is just, but it's not touching me or moving me like I thought it might. I can see why people love it, but for me it's not quite there. It has that sort of Astral Weeks thing where there's a sort of atmosphere created, but at the same time it's just not for me, you know, something about it. And yet there's some moments on here which just make you go, oh, that is just gorgeous, you know. It's really interesting, so I'm going to give it another couple of plays, but I don't know how long or how often I'll play this record. But I'm so happy to find it. It's just one of those, so rare, you know. And here's another one in the same shop a few days later. Jaw-dropping, really. if you're into this kind of thing. It's another three-figure. Brian Bennett's Voyage, a journey into discoid funk. Oh, this is near mint. I mean, it's just, to find this record is not easy at all. I mean, it's an exceptional album. It's Francis Monkman. Brian Bennett was in the Shadows. Francis Monkman from Curved Air, who programmed all the synthesizers and analog, just incredible analog synthesized sound on this. 1978, Alan Jones on bass, who I think did library music, played guitar albums. But Monkman and Bennett did library music for Bruton Music, released quite a lot of stuff through Bruton, or recorded a lot for them. This album itself ended up on Bruton as Fantasia in 1982. It is an exceptional album. People say, you know, it's a 5-star review album every time. It has that exploratory nature and that wonderful analog synth sound. Just brilliant. And it does go into kind of disco elements, sort of a slight disco element in a couple of tracks. Ocean Glide is a lovely kind of mellow piece to end on. There's only 3 tracks aside, so they're fairly lengthy. Airquake is one of the best analog synth tracks I've ever heard. It's just power. The power they get out of the synthesizers on that, just remarkable. And there is a kind of that funky sort of disco feel, but not with being a kind of in your face sort of, it's here to dance to. It's got a kind of cerebral quality to this, and just a lovely feel to the album. I think the first track, Voyage, is perhaps, for me, maybe one of the slightly weaker, because it's got a little bit of melody from synth, and I'm not always a fan of it. But it is a lovely sounding record and a rare album. And to find it, yeah, in a charity shop, quite fantastic. Anyway, there's a few boring records. And if you made it this far, then, yeah, must be as boring as the records themselves. Certainly is bored as well. Oh yeah, anyway, I'll see you all later.